Hello folks, welcome back. In this tutorial, we will go ahead and talk about exceptions. What is an exception? An exception is a special condition that changes the normal flow of the program execution. That's when something bad happens that the program can't deal with, it throws an exception. So let's do a small example to illustrate that. So we're going to go ahead and create a simple class called demo2. And in this class, we're going to go ahead and create a method called public static void show, and in this we create a variable called as string s, and we'll say system.of_debug, and we're saying so this is like whenever you give a string and it converts into a lowercase. So this is the method that string gives you. So let's say if I have a variable called as Deepika and it converts it into a lowercase. And let's say we have a statement outside of this. So we've just a simple example. We have created a string variable and we are trying to convert into a lowercase. So now let's go ahead and execute this program, and we'll say since it's a static method, it does not need an object of the class to be created to call the method. We can directly call it with the class name. So this is going to go ahead and convert this Deepika into a lowercase. So if you go ahead and look at the output, it's going to be a small letter Deepika. Now if you haven't initialized this variable and you go ahead and save it, so what's going to happen is there is no value has been given. You have not initialized the string, so string is kind of pointing to null right now. Okay, so now if you go back here and execute this program, it throws an exception called null pointer exception. So this is called as an exception. And there are different conditions where an exception is thrown. So exception is basically a kind of problem that kind of disrupts the normal flow of the program, and your let's say your code expects a value from something that is currently null. So that's why it gave you a null pointer exception. Or let's say you're trying to insert and update something to do some validation. So there is an issue occurred, or you're using an array where that particular size is not available. So these are different ways where an exception can occur. So how to handle these kind of things? How to handle an exception? So an exception can be handled with something called as a try catch block. So you create a try catch block. So what is this? So whatever the code that you think might throw an exception, it won't throw it always, it might. Let's say you're watching a football game and not always the rain comes, right? There might be 1-2 chances when the rain comes. Okay, so similarly an exception may or may occur, but you know that okay, this code might result into an exception, so you wanted to take some precautions. So now we are going to go ahead, so whatever the code that you think might result through an exception, you write it into the try block, and whenever an exception occur, you handle the exception here. So this is way to handle. So let's say if there are different kinds of an exception. There might be a null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception. There are a lot of different kinds of exceptions, and you can have different catch block to handle these different exceptions. So let's do a simple example to illustrate that. So we'll go back to our class and we'll create a simple program to illustrate that. So let's say we create a new class, and let's say we create a class called lead example, and in this lead class, so lead, if you look at in the Salesforce, this is a standard object that Salesforce gives to you. So we have late d is equals to new of lead. So whenever you need to, so there are some required fields that you need to go ahead and provide whenever you're trying to create a lead object. Okay, so for example, if I go up here and if I go to the leads, so I need to have certain values. If I go ahead and wanted to create a new lead record, I need to provide last name and the company name. Otherwise, I won't be able to save the value. So let's say last name is Khanna, company name is HRA. Okay, so this is the lead. If you don't provide these values, it won't let you save or create a new record. So if you say here, it won't let you because you have to provide the value of the company. So in this example, let's say you are going to go ahead and you are trying to create a read record. So what we can do here is, if you know that this code might result into an issue. Okay, so we're going to say public. So we can go up here and you don't have to, you can just lead as an example. So you can say lead D is equals to new of lead. And here you can say insert D, and insert is a command to insert something into the database. Okay, so you're creating an object of the lead, and you're inserting the record now. And this line is fine, right? System.of_debug, hi, how are you? So there's no issue with this line. So we're going to go ahead and run this. So this line should execute because there is no problem. We're just doing a simple debug statement, and we're trying to create a lead record by using a new lead. So the problem here is, guys, we are not providing the required values, right? We are not providing that required values that we need to create a lead object. So let's see what happens if you execute this program. And if you see, there is an exception occurred that is called a DML exception. Okay, and it's telling you that I need to have last name and company name specified here. So how you can prevent it, how you can do something like this to prevent this from happening, you want to go ahead and do that. So for example, here in this case, I can put, this is the code that results into an exception. So I can put this code into a try block. So I'm going to put, so this is the block of code that threw an exception. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in a try block. Okay, and now if then exception occurs, I'm going to go ahead and do a catch block. So let's say there is an exception occurred, you're going to catch it. And you'll say system.of_debug, I am trying to catch this exception. Okay, so what's going to happen is, if an exception occurs, in this case, if an exception has occurred, so let me show you the full program. So whatever the code that you think might result into a problem, you have written into a try block. And if this code has resulted into an exception, this block is going to take care of handling it. But it will not disrupt the normal flow of the program. Right? This line has nothing, there's nothing wrong in it. So if an exception has occurred, I still wanted to go ahead and continue with my program, and I wanted to handle the exception. So if you execute it this time, even the same exception has occurred, but the thing is, it has been handled by the catch block, and it still went ahead and ran the next steps. Hello, how are you? So this is the way of handling a try catch block. If an exception has occurred, this is going to execute. There is something called as a finally block. What do you mean by a finally block? Finally block is a block of code that executes no matter what. If the exception occurs or if the exception does not occur, it will execute. So this block, catch block, will run only if the exception has occurred. Only in that case, this catch block is going to run. But the finally block will run no matter what. So if I have a finally block, so I'm going to go ahead and create a finally block here, and I'll say system.of_debug except I'm a finally block. So here, if you go ahead and do that, and you're going to go ahead and execute it, so even if the exception occurs or if the exception does not occur, it is still going to go ahead and run this program. So if I say execute, and if you say debug, I'm trying to catch this exception because the catch block has ran, I'm a finally block. So in this case, exception has occurred, but the finally block still ran, and it continued with the next flow. Similarly, let's say you're not doing something wrong. You're providing the required field values. Let's say you're providing the last name field is equals to, let's say, hello, and let's say the company name that you're providing is equals to HR. So these are the two values that it needs. So you're providing this value, so it should not throw an exception. It should work fine. So this catch block won't run because exception won't be thrown in this case. So if you go ahead and execute it, there should not be any exception occurring. But still the finally block will run. So finally block is a block of code that will run no matter what. So it's going to run the finally block, and it's going to say it will continue with the program execution. So this statement is fine. So you wanted to go ahead and continue executing it. So this statement is fine. So it ran. Finally block ran. But the catch block didn't ran, because what it did is it went ahead and created a lead record and it inserted into the database, and there was no exception that has occurred, so this block didn't run. So now if you go back and look at the leads table, there will be a lead record with the hello and HR. Okay, so this is about exception, guys. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Till then, thank you and stay tuned.